Welcome to another edition of Balance of Forces. This is a show that deals with current affairs, politics, and business. And today we are talking about the future of the ANC. I am Jamie Mighty and I'm joined by Bataung Kosokwani. Now, the first question is, where did the ANC go wrong, if it went wrong at all? Bataung, what do you think?
Brother Jamie, look, the ANC's organizational renewal project resulted in short-term losses. But looking on the long-term strategy is definitely going to mean stability and it's going to mean growth. Now, this is based on three aspects, right? The ANC is cleaning up shop, internally and externally. Two, Ramaphosa's mobilization of confidence in the markets and the international community. And then three, the good work that's been done in terms of higher education and just the economy and the socioeconomic situations of the black middle class. Now, let me go into much more explanation. Now, when you look at the ANC cleaning up shop, an important aspect of this is the stepping side resolution. That's the first thing. The second thing is the issue of the president, right after his election in 2017, cleaning up state-owned enterprises. You look at Eskom's board has been cleaned up. You look at Transnet's board has been cleaned up. So is the now SAA is back in the skies. And that is a sign of good confidence. You also go into the issue of step-aside resolution. The decision has been reinforced by the actions of the party and the executive. When you look at the suspended Secretary General as we speak right now, you look at Zulim Kiza, a supposedly ally of the president, has also steps aside. You also look at Zandile Kumet and other sort of political players in the KZN region. That reinforces the fact that the ANC is trying to clean itself, is trying to rid of this perception of corruption, of just shenanigans in the company. The last sort of aspect on this is the VBS accused. The suspended former ANC treasurer in Limpopo, Danny Caesar, has also been suspended. So this is consistent. This is consistent with the whole rhetoric of the renewal of the party, the renewal of the soul of the organization, and really trying to put back the trust within the community. On the issue of Ramaphosa's mobilizing markets and the international community, it's very important that we discuss this. The first thing is the 70 billion we got in July from the IMF. I think that's very notable. It protects job creation and it protects businesses. And the fact that the international community is still loaning us this money is still, it's a good sign. It's a sign of good faith. No international organizations are going to give you money not knowing exactly the future and confidence that they have in a country or in the ruling party. Second is the 131 billion that we got from COP 17, right? The European Union, Germany, France, UK, giving us this 131 billion, literally as a commitment to be like, let's move you away from coal to renewable energy. Again, this is a sign of good confidence. And in my opinion, it shows the international community and really that the president is on the right track. Lastly, I think the ANC has put in a lot of, how can I say, buffer zones, right? The increase in NAFSA's budget was one of those buffer zones. I think the biggest issue facing the ANC is unemployment and education. The NAFSA's budget in 2018 was 20 billion. It went up by 107% to 44 billion in 2020. That is significant. When you look at business support, I mean, there's over 101 incubators and hubs in the country, specifically looking at businesses and digital. That is a significant sort of stimulus into the economic growth and employment growth of the country. When you look at the black middle class, in 2008, we were celebrating 25 years of democracy. And when you look at 1993, we had 22.2 million black people in the middle class. Now we're sitting at 5.4 in 2018 when we're celebrating 25 years of democracy. That is a continued story. It's a good story of how the ANC is consistently trying to rejuvenate itself, trying to cleanse itself, and really talk to the masses. And I think it would be dangerous to say the ANC is completely off the rails. Yes, the ANC is going through some short-term turbulences with the elections. However, the renewal project from a long-term basis, like I said, will mean stability and growth.
Okay, right. So I'm going to try to answer the question from where I sit in terms of where do I think the ANC went wrong. Number one, I think that the education failures in the last 27 years have contributed to unemployment. And whenever you have high unemployment, that leads to weakness for the ruling party. Number two, the factionalism went mainstream. And when factionalism goes mainstream, that affects the perceptions of the party. And I think that's something that is significant to bear in mind. Number three, there has been a lack of capacity building in the areas where it matters. And that also has been something that I think the ANC has failed in doing. Number four, I think the ANC made a mistake in abandoning the message of radical economic transformation. Number five, the sidelining of the Youth League, I think, will affect the prospects of the party. Now, let me go into those points in detail. I don't think that the ANC did a good job in the last 27 years in making sure that education is dealt with. Let's look at the numbers, right? The numbers are as follows. You've got 12.4 million students in the education system, 400,000 teachers, and 23,076 schools. But the dropout rate is 48%. 48% of the students don't make it to grade 12. They don't get to write the exam. And of those who get to write the exam, a low number get the 50% pass mark. So it means that, one, you've got people who don't make it to the finish line, and those who make it to the finish line get a low quality pass. Now, education and the quality of education are a barrier to economic success. There's a direct relationship between the education level and the skill level. And there's a direct relationship between the skill level and the employment base in the country. And when you look at the World Economic Forum data from the Global Competitiveness Report, this is what the numbers say. Skills of current workforce, 101 out of 141. Quality of vocational training, 119 out of 141. Graduate skill set, 102 out of 141. Skill of future workforce, 107. Pupil to teacher ratio in primary school, 109 out of 141. All of these metrics indicate a government that has failed on its core duty of educating the public. And I think this rests on the ANC. Now, education rate and unemployment do have a direct correlation. This is what the Stats SA labor force data indicated. Those who are in possession of less than a matric school leaving certificate, 39% of them were in the unemployment data, and then followed by 36.6%. So of the unemployment data was 32.4% unemployment, right? And then if you use the expanded definition, 44.4. Of that number, 39.1% had less than a matric certificate, and then 36.6% had a matric certificate. Effectively, 75% of the people who are unemployed are either sitting on a matric certificate or less. So when you look at the failure to educate, that directly translates to unemployment. And when you have failed in that way, I think that it affects your party's prospects long term. So I think that that's where the ANC dropped the ball and where they went wrong and why they are facing the kind of challenges that they are facing, because you have this high youth unemployment, and it directly comes from the fact that you didn't fix your education system. So that's number one. Number two, factionalism went mainstream. There was a time when the ANC used to come to the public and say, we're united, and used to say that there's collective responsibility. Now, what you hear from the ANC is that you had 9 wasted years, and this faction was responsible for the 9 wasted years. That's something that I think hurts the health of the party. Because when you look at Cyril Ramaphosa's results in the 2017 conference, he narrowly won. Meaning that 50% of the organization is with you, 50% of the organization is against you, or not enthusiastic about you, they're enthusiastic about the other guy. What Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma used to do is they would come there and say, we're united, unity Makabane. But now you've got this, it's RT and it's us. the Tumamina faction. So when you have that kind of a conflict within the party, that hurts the enthusiasm of party members, because they're looking at the situation saying, why should we support this guy? He is going after our guy. Under Zuma, under Thabo Mbeki, what used to happen is that if you were no longer in favor, you wouldn't get the ambassador appointments, you wouldn't get the cabinet appointments, and that would hurt you and hurt people in your camp, because all of a sudden you cannot make resources flow. So you're still going to be weak at conference because you cannot make resources flow. People are not going to come to you. People are not going to give you financial favors because what can you do for them? So I think that when factionalism went mainstream, that hurt the ANC, and that's something that affected its long-term prospects. But number three, I think the lack of capacity building. What do I mean by this? ESCOM is one of the things which is going to kill the ANC, because as the power outages continue, people, when they go to vote, they're frustrated because they're feeling it directly. They feel the lack of power, they feel the lack of electricity, and they're like, you know what, screw these guys. I'm not going to vote for these guys. And this is something that the ANC had a long runway to fix and has not fixed effectively. Right now, we're hearing, Directors say that it's going to take 5 years, and it's likely realistic or even taking longer than 5 years, because it takes a long time to fix the kind of problems that are at a parastatal. Anybody who gets it now is not going to be able to fix things in real time. They're not going to be able to fix things quickly. So when you take those things together, the education failures, the factionalism that went mainstream, the lack of capacity building, you can see how the ANC has created the kind of political environment that makes it difficult to win. And what are the problems that continue to exist in the country? High income inequality, high wealth inequality, apartheid spatial planning. Those kind of things require you to take the posture, which requires you to speak on radical economic transformation. But we've seen, President Ramaphosa say, no, radical economic transformation is not necessarily the policy of the ANC, even though that was a conference resolution. When you abandon the radical economic transformation messaging, what that does is it leaves other people able to come and take your radical messaging and make it their own. So the EFF can come and say, we are more radical than these guys. We are the ones committed to economic freedom in your lifetime. And what it makes it seem is that the ANC then is now taking a conservative posture, a posture which does favor the markets, which does favor, the stability of the rand. But when you're on the economic outside, looking into Sandton, you can't get in from Alex. Looking into Sandton, you can't get in from Soweto. And then you are told that, no, we're going to keep the rand stable. We're not going to do anything radical. I think that hurts your prospects as a party, because now, why am I going to come to you as a young person? Why am I going to come to you as somebody who's economically on the outside? I think that's where you begin to see some of the challenges around the abandoning of the messaging. And fifthly, I think when you sideline the Youth League, which is what has happened, I think that there's a lot of trauma and traumatic responses within the ANC because of how Julius Malema moved. The ANC Youth League was a kingmaker. They supported Zuma. They removed Thabo Mbeki. Malema was basically bulldozing on a lot of things. And when Malema and Floyd Shivambu and the whole cabal that eventually became the EFF was removed, there was almost this reluctance to give fire to the Youth League again. But I'm going to submit to you that I think that was a mistake, because what that did is that it sidelined a generation, because you've got the TAS team and they've not been setting up branches, they've not been as active as they could be. And I think, there was this time when there was almost energy to go to conference, and then that conference got, killed before COVID. And I think there was a fear that the people who were going to emerge, the Laminis, etc., were going to be very vocal, very aggressive, very radical. And people were like, we can't afford to have our Youth League undermining leadership. Let's rather keep Youth League, under control, under the management of senior leadership. But I think what that has done is it's made the EFF seem like a home for young politicians, and the ANC look like there's no real space for young politicians. And what that does is it kills you on the ground, because you need the youth for energy, you need the youth for mobilization, you need them for creativity, for ingenuity. And I think that the ANC has lost a lot of that because of the sidelining of the Youth League. So when someone asked, where did the ANC go wrong? To me, it's those 5 things taken together. I think that corruption is a factor, but I don't think it's the biggest factor because, you know, the UK Parliament right now is very corrupt. Boris Johnson's Tory party is corrupt. Even when you look at the activities of a lot of these parliaments, there are always big business guys making deals with government which don't always make sense. Joe Biden is not exempt. There is corruption in Europe in the same way that there's corruption in Africa. Obviously, corruption can be managed through better systems and can be reduced. However, I think that corruption becomes this thing that we say is affecting a political party when nobody feels the benefits of that political party being in power. When there is, you know, the acceptable level of corruption, if people feel like they're benefiting, that they're also getting a share, corruption doesn't become that big of a deal in who gets to be given power or not given power. But when there's extensive corruption and then you have all of these other problems where people are unemployed, the delivery is not working, people are feeling marginalized, feeling like the messaging is not to their benefit, I think that's where you get to see you know, a party do poorly. So I think that if the ANC is going to regenerate, maybe there's some credence to what you're saying, that, you know, Cyril Ramaphosa will have room to fix a lot of the things, but I don't know if it will fix some of these fundamental things. But let's go to the second question. Do you think that the ANC will be in opposition in 2024?
The ANC, just to go back to the issue of the renewal project, it's very important for viewers to understand that this long-term project is essential. We're at a point of no return where certain things are required, certain things are necessary. One of those necessary is really the social compact that we have as the ANC with the public. And the ANC needs to reinstill that sort of compact in order to have another 50 years or 100 years in governance. The ANC, should it be in opposition? At the sacrifice of the long-term strategy, I rate that it should, if it means that the renewal project is right on track.
But do you think that by 2024 you guys are going to be in opposition benches, or ANC is going to be in opposition?
I do think it takes time to renew. It takes time. I just went through the whole, you know, the step aside, the changes in the ESCOM. All these things are going to take time. So the issue of us being on the opposition benches is likely, but in the long term, it means stability and growth. And that's where I think the ANC will be able to transcend. Because sacrificing short-term victories, you know, just to make it on 2024 or whatever, you know, that doesn't translate to longevity. And I think for the ANC to remain another 100-year organization has to undergo that opposition. If it means being an opposition just to stand back, fix itself, and then come back and say that, look guys, we've fixed ourselves, we've reinstilled the social compact, and this is who we are, and these are the candidates. And there's a track record to see like, okay, these guys have indeed rejuvenated themselves.
So to answer the question, I actually don't think that the ANC will be in opposition benches in 2024. I think that we're still going to have another Cyril Ramaphosa presidency, but I think it's going to be a very narrow victory for the ANC. I mean, if you look at the trends, because the trends have been such that, you know, 2004, ANC was sitting on 279 seats, which is, I think, the peak. That's about 67% that they were sitting on. They had more than 2/3 by themselves. Then you go to 2009, 264. So you drop some seats, 15 seats you drop. Then you go to 2014, where the seats drop again by 15 to 249. Then you go to 2019, the seats now drop by 19, which is about 230 seats, which is what the ANC got in the last national election for the National Assembly Parliament. So I think when you look at that trend, you know, it's a drop of 15, then 19. I think that's where we're going to likely see the ANC drop about 20 seats, which is a sizable number of seats, but it's not going to be enough to take the ANC under 200. So they will have enough seats in Parliament to actually vote for the president of their choice, who is likely to be Cyril Ramaphosa. I don't think that Cyril Ramaphosa, for the reasons that you've outlined, is going to lose the next conference. I think a lot of his rivals are on the sidelines, and even though the RT faction has still got largesse in eThekwini, I don't think that's enough to win conference. I think Cyril still has a lot of support from very influential people in society. I think his donor base is still stable. I think the markets are still preferential to Cyril Ramaphosa. So he'll be able to fundraise significantly. He'll be able to use those resources to show up support within the party. And I think that his rivals are going to be on the rope, facing court cases, etc., etc. So I think that even if NDZ runs again, I don't think she can get the right number of votes to beat Cyril for 2022 conference. So I think we're still going to have a Ramaphosa presidency, but I think there's a lot of damage to the ANC brand, and I'm not sure whether they can recover. So I think that by the time we start getting to 2029, right, if all of the other political parties get their act together, because there's still a lot of variables. The ANC is a very old organization, and they benefit from that. Whereas some of the newer organizations are still learning about the consequences of growth. And you can fail from success. So you can be like Hope, you start hot, and then you fizzle. Who knows? That could happen to Action SA. There's a lot, as you begin to expand, there's a lot more factors that come into play. But I think that 2029, you may not have the ANC in a position to govern. Then the question then becomes, who's the next South African president in 2029? Could be Julius Malema, could even be Mmusi Maimane, we don't know. But I think that when it comes to 2024, which is the next election, we're still going to see an ANC presidency and Cyril Ramaphosa being the head of the state. That's what I think. That's all the time we have for this particular episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, share, comment. Let's have a discussion. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter, retweet. Let's have the conversation. Thanks so much.